Okay, so let's continue. So I'm senior consultant, business central consultant at Companial, and also a team lead, working for around 5 years already at Companial. Had quite a few of these webinars, and hope this one will be also useful and interesting for you. So my main focus, like picking the topics as usual for these webinars, is maybe to bring attention to some of the features or enhancements that partners may be using in their custom developments for their customers, or maybe some ASV-like parts of the ASV products that may be that may at some point may decide to reuse what's in standard already, or to basically save time on supporting it. And this is a brief agenda for today. We will cover, of course, the Copilot. Who doesn't do this today? We will cover some user experience, reporting, Power Platform, and other features. So let's not look at the agenda too long, and let's just jump straight into the topics. So one of the first topic is Copilot, that is brought by Azure OpenAI. So first of all, currently it's a tad limited maybe in Business Central. We are very limited to basically using it in one scenario to prepare some marketing materials, marketing text for our items based on information we can provide to AI and get back some creative text. Not a lot, but this is also quite a new topic, and it's I think timing is very well from Microsoft side to let users, let's say, to feel what's happening, what is the use case, what can be improved, and so on. There are some limitations, let's say, and prerequisites. So first of all, you need to be using one of the, if you have access, let's say, to your admin center, you may just create a new sandbox, but you're limited to be using one of the countries. Their main language are English. So that's also one of the main constraints is that main language so far is English for various scenarios. Also, it's important to understand that community is also working on some enhancements, some ideas, and as example, this will be demoed by Katson at MVP Katson at one of upcoming webinars. So basically, what he tried to showcase is by providing some human language prompt to properly set up a schedule based on just a human language. So that's one of the idea. I also tried to came to some idea and to showcase something to you, so it will be in the demo. I hope we'll have time for that. So basically, I pulled the item description, translate it, get a picture for it, and put it back to Business Central. But that's just an idea how can it be used. So again, one of the main constraints so far is very limited functionality, and language is English. Then we are moving to user experience improvements across the platform. So first of all, for the businesses, I don't know, or positions who are like perform like crazy, maybe somewhere in warehouse using their keyboards. So now there is a how to call it, like native keyboard navigation. So basically, you don't need to develop it. You don't need to put any effort into using it. It just allows you to use your keyboard to navigate through the most of menus. Then I don't know, probably long time the standard in the web application is drag and drop. So basically now anywhere anywhere Business Central expects the file or an attachment, you can use this nice drag and drop like window. It's not like embedded in some fact boxes like some of the ISV products does. So far, it's just where you have an attachment, you have a possibility to use drag and drop. So finally, some of the UX improvements is tailoring your action bar at the line levels to your needs, basically reassigning or maybe redesigning, placing actions to the place where you need it the most. We will hopefully to have a quick look at it during the demo. The reporting, I would say this is one of the maybe biggest releases in this not releases, biggest features in this release. It's basically it's a pivot table within your client. It's usable right now out of the box. It has some limitations. It's limited to 100 rows. It's limited to 100 rows. If you want to, let's say, probably if you have more data than that, you would need to pre-filter it somehow. Also, it has slight UI. I cannot call it a bug, but it's been enabled on every list page. So basically, this analyze feature that is not very user friendly in most scenarios. So, but that's two main constraints Microsoft is working on to release it somewhere in September. So when they will be ready to work with more than 100,000 lines, and we'll fix this UI issue, I would call it a minor issue, they will be looking at releasing it to moving it from the preview version. We have a few improvements in Power Platform area. So first of all, adaptive cards that can be shared from within Business Central directly to teams, and possibility to control the content of the adaptive card. So basically, you can either include and everything you see in this preview, or you can basically control that this view is managed by the user permissions, who is basically looking at the card. So it can be minimized if user doesn't have permissions to read all the information. And the next change, I think it's quite important one for developers or creators, that now you can select the main the Power Automate environment you are running, let's say, against, because previously it was like one default environment. Now, if you are using multiple environments, you can switch them straight in Business Central. Then we are moving to, I would say, maybe the most changes sits in this area in the inventory and warehouse area. So first of all, coffee demo data is available for extensive warehousing scenarios. Also important, I would say, important change is that some of the advanced warehouse functionality became like not connected to the directed put to the full featured VMS scenario when you have directed put away and picks on your location. So basically now you can use zones, movements, movement worksheets. You can calculate bin replenishments. You can use bin capacity policy. You can, system can respect warehouse class check, and also you can define special equipments for non-directed locations. So basically, the more advanced features are now available for, let's say, normal locations, and that has sense in some in scenarios where businesses doesn't need the full complexity of full warehousing, but still wants to use some of the features. Then we have like small improvement, maybe useful in some limited scenarios like starting balances, or maybe in some cases it's really easy to enter, maybe or faster to enter tracking directly on the line. instead of going into tracking information. So basically on certain journals, item journals, we can enable the entering of the tracking information directly on the journal line. Also, one neat feature is like you can select multiple items into, let's see, and pull them into, I don't know, purchase document, well, basically to the lines of the document, purchase documents, transfers, sales documents. So basically, without entering items line by line, you can just pick a set of the items and add them in one go. Also, we have a quick possibility to undo transfer shipments. We can, that one may be interesting for some, that basically we can now ship and receive non-inventory items in warehouse documents, and the logic behind it can be based on the attaching some of the original item line, inventory line, to the non-inventory lines, and then these non-inventory lines would be processed together, or to let it to the or the trigger would be just the first inventory line posting would post everything that is non-inventory on the document. So some flexibility and functionality here. And finally, batch transfer posting of, let's say, shipping or receiving transfer documents. It's basically either from UI, you can pick several documents and post them in batch. Either you can set it up as a queue, and using this batch post report. Finally, some small features implemented. Well, this I would say specifically functional features like invoice posting policy, where you can. Oh, sorry, the slide is sorry. I have a bad slide. Sorry. So invoice posting policy is about setting the user setup for specific user to limit his possibility to post, let's say, in the invoice document. If you don't want someone to post invoice, but just let's say shipping, you can define that in user setup. Finally, preview posting are available in most of the, I believe, probably all of the journals, and you finally can, let's say, preview posting an item journal. There is a bunch of functionality around master data management. It's well, so-called master data management. You can just look it up in the search of Business Central, and you have a UI that basically helps you to not only to move master data initially, but then keep it synchronized based on the rules you define, the defined mapping, and no filtering and other possibilities with this master data management feature. And what's not available, I was not able to touch it, but it's upcoming in, well, probably in September. So exchange rate adjustment will be improved. It will be more extensible, and it will you will have the control on the dimensions that will be posted by this job. So you have a flexibility to use either source entry dimension for gain loss postings. You can skip that and use dimensions from the account specified, or you can not use dimensions at all for foreign exchange adjustment postings. And finally, yeah, also to be available somewhere in September is that you can basically set up an alternative information for posting payables and receivables. So if it's set up, then on some special occasions when it's needed, the user can decide and override the default posting, let's say, routines. So, and one of the, I think, features appreciated by administrators that makes their life easier is, first of all, that we now can use Azure security groups and link them to Business Central. Basically, so any new user belonging to the security group can get certain permissions or permission sets, out of the box. And finally, I think, I'm not sure, I haven't used it fully previously, but I think because I heard reports that it's not working well, this include and exclude feature that I think I tested right now, and it seems to be work very well right now. So basically, one of the well-fit scenarios for this would be if you are letting your user to use standard Business Central, let's say, permission sets, and as we know, they may change with releases. So it may be a good idea to assign user this standard permission set, and if you want to exclude something, let's say you don't want user to read banks, but maybe he can do all other journal transactions, so you can just maybe remove, exclude permission to the bank. It's just an example how this can be used. So users still have standard Business Central permission set. You have your own permission sets that say basically exclude certain tables or permissions on the table, and this exclude will be respected over the include, let's say, scenario. And this way you can more granularly control the access and, of course, reuse, most importantly, reuse the permissions provided by Microsoft. So, and I have very limited time for a demo, and I hope let's try to do it. I believe we will stop only on the sorry, I need to find my right screen. Okay, so that was one of the ideas that I just wanted maybe to share with you. So what can be done with AI that is all over the world already. So I built very short scenario. So when we have a new item, we're basically identifying it. I'm translating it to Spanish language. I don't know why, but basically the AI decides, detects the input language and translates whatever it will be to the Spanish. Not based on the translation, but based on the original description, I request some AI image generation for the item. And finally, I do post this to Teams. Unfortunately, posting it to Teams doesn't work completely well from Power Automate, though Teams card working good from Business Central itself. So few prerequisites I mentioned if you have access to your Business Central admin center. So hope it won't take long. But it's demo effect. So the idea here is to create proper environment. You need to make sure your country is English speaking and to choose the correct version, which includes Copilot, but probably we should skip this part. So what we can do is to see this Copilot in action. So let's say we have our Teams desk, and I have Copilot enabled. So just with a click of one click of a button, yeah, we have a suggested marketing text, marketing description with some controls. So first of all, description is looking at the attributes. You can exclude or include them if you don't need or don't like some of the text. You can choose the, let's see, format and length of the text that will be outputted. So if it's just a tagline, we can create a draft and it will be much less text. There is some more settings that basically you can put an emphasis on something. I don't know if it makes sense in this scenario, but yeah, maybe this table is very, very fast. So I want an emphasis on that. So, and that's basically it. What Copilot, this limited marketing text feature, is offering us. So, but it's a good point to start experimenting. But we can also try out another scenario. So, using my Power Automate flow, I will create an item with some description, just a random description. Sorry, this demo may not have a lot of sense, but nevertheless. So by just creating an item, so my goal is to, in this case, is to receive a notification that some item was created. And I hope it will happen. Maybe not that fast. We can, of course, check if my item has updated. Yeah, it's demo effect. Let's check my flow. It's running. It's running, and it's running long enough. I'm not sure why. Yeah, by the way, why it's running? Well, it's still running, so we can make sure. Oh, it's gone. Maybe it's only for sandboxes. Yeah, it's only for sandboxes. So you can create yourself a sandbox. Just be sure to choose country UK, US, and select the right version. Let's look at my item. If it's not ready, then my demo is, so now this item has some image. I have some information in my teams about the new card. About the new item, and it's the Teams card I mentioned. The one thing, and translation to Spanish. And one thing with this card I came up to is that if I would share this directly from Business Central environment, from my client, it would have an image, and somehow from Power Automate I'm not able to do that. But that's the final part of my demo, so I will want just to share this card with myself in Teams. And this is the mentioned. Now you can see that my Power Automate card somehow missing the image, and this card is fine. And this some of these details can be controlled as mentioned from within Business Central. You can have just a very brief description without all the details if you would like to. So I'm a bit out of time. I want to get back to my slides. And to start a poll. And our poll is about, because I'm going to present Upgrade Analyzer features, not features, but so our poll is, are you planning to upgrade to the new release? It's basically yes or no, and we hope you are going to do that. And with our Upgrade Analyzer, we can, with Companial's Upgrade Analyzer, we can help you to do it in very quick and efficient way. So it's just a very easy uploading FOB file to our platform in up to, and it's also completely free, and in up to 5 days after we carry out the analysis. I think most of the time it happens a little bit faster. You will get some initial details. By the way, you have a choice. Basically, you have a choice between different upgrade options, plans, and with already seen fixed price proposal. Again, this is a free service. I mean, not the upgrade itself is free, but analysis is free. It's fast, and it already provides you some fixed price numbers. and I think it's quite great. And finally, after choosing the path you need, you can also add some final adjustments, see the lines, let's say how the lines is split, why the price is so on one line or another line. You see some commands. You can even choose, let's say, some options of the upgrade. And again, everything in one place, free, and you just need to try it out by uploading an FOB file and providing some initial information. So thank you, and I'm giving the stage to my colleague Jan. He will cover the technical part. Hello, Jan, and goodbye.
Hello. Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
I will start by sharing my screen. Okay, that seems to work. Hello, everyone. My name is Jan Veenendaal. I am a partner technology strategist. And am I still muted?
No, Jan, we can hear.
Sorry. Okay, great. So that means that I help partners with all their technical problems that they have with Business Central. And today I'm going to walk you through all the enhancements that have been released in Business Central in the latest release. And I've divided these into 7 groups of enhancements about developer experience and AL language. You will see that there are a lot of things there because Microsoft is now internally also using AL language for development of Business Central. Then there is one change in the application that I want to highlight. It's not there yet, but it will come. There are improvements in performance, some improvements in the lifecycle of apps, mainly on app source, but also for per tenant extensions. Then there's new telemetry or extended telemetry, and there's also some features that are added to the on-premise version of Business Central. So if we're going to look at the developer experience, we are talking about how a developer works in the Visual Studio Code product. In Visual Studio Code, we have 2 new pages called AL Explorer and AL Home. And it is bold here. That means that I will do a short demo of this at the end of the presentation. Then we get something called code actions to remove the application area setting from fields on pages. In earlier versions of AL, if you created a page and you put a field on the page, you had to specify an application area for each field specifically. But since the last release, you can also have an application area setting on the top of the page, so a general setting. And now there's a code action in Visual Studio Code that helps you to remove the application area setting from fields if it is equal to the setting from the page. So it's just to clean up your page definition. Also, we can now go to implementation for interfaces. An interface is an object in AL that defines how code units should interact, which functions they should provide, and there can be several code units implementing one interface. And now you can go from the interface to the code units that implement it. Then there's an improvement in the compiler resource handling, which means that AL will load faster and code analysis will run faster. This will especially help you if you have a bit larger project in AL. There are some improvements in IntelliSense. So that is the pop-up that you get if you hover your mouse over a term in Visual Studio Code. It will now tell you if you are looking at a temporary table or if not. So then you know that it's a real table. And IntelliSense will also suggest an ordinal value, that's the number for an enum. So if you create an enum, which is the replacement for options, and you add a new enum value, then it will suggest the number for that enum. Then there's a new rule that says, well, if you disable some warnings from the code analysis, you could, in earlier versions, by accident, disable all of the warnings in one go. And that is no longer possible. It now requires you to disable a specific rule. Then, if you have a larger project, you can have multiple projects within one AL workspace. And each of these projects can have their separate AL package cache path in the AL environment. And until now, that was not working that well. Then apps would not always be able to find the package that they would need from other apps in the same project. But now you can have multiple paths defined, so it helps the compiler to find the symbols that you need for compiling. A similar option is now in URLs for include rule sets. Rule sets define which rules you will or will not use in your development environment. And now by defining them in a URL, you can share these rule sets with several developers. So if you have a rule that you want to disable or to use for all of your developers, you can just define it in a place that can be reached through a URL, and then all developers will be able to use that same rule set instead of defining it themselves. What's also coming is that the debugger in Visual Studio Code will be able to connect to an active session or to a next session. So you can now not only debug a new session, but you can also debug already running sessions and wait for the next session to pop up. This is something that we had in NAV, and in the latest version of Business Central. Now we can also start doing this from this month, probably. In the AL language, we have event subscribers, and these event subscribers, currently they use a string literal value, and that can now be replaced by an identifier. I will demo that and let you show what advantage is there. Then we get in-stream objects, and if you wanted to know how much data you would get into your environment, what you needed to do earlier was to create a blob and then assign that in-stream to that blob, and then from that blob you could find out how much bytes, how many bytes there were in that blob and where you were reading it. While this blob is taking memory on your server, and in a lot of cases you do not even need that. So now instead of using a blob, you can now directly do that from an in-stream object. For performance issues, there's also something called database locking behavior. If you are using a record and you are reading through a record set, you can now define if that's that loop that is going to read the data, if that is reading uncommitted data or only the already committed data from other processes. So you can make sure that your process is not blocked by other processes, basically. Then we can now per report set regional settings. That means that you can define how a report should format numbers and dates. So that is defined based on a region property. And this is different from the user's region property, which was used until now. So you can now have a specific format for a report. In the previous release, we had an item called developers can write faster upgrade code that was using a new type of AL object called the data transfer. And data transfers are now also available for install code units. So if you need to move a lot of data when you are installing your app because of that it's already somewhere, but you need to move it into the tables of your app, you can now do that using a data transfer object. And that runs on the SQL server instead of on the AL server. So it runs a lot quicker. Then we have control add-ins, and control add-ins are usually JavaScript code. And if you have resources there, like images or specific files that you need to load, until now you had to specify all these images one by one. And what you can now do is you can specify a path, and then all the resources from that path will be available to your add-on, to your add-in, I must say. Also, a text variable in AL or in CAL, a text is basically an array of characters, and we have a for each command, and now we can also use the for each to iterate through a text variable. So if we have a text variable, we can just enumerate all the characters in that text. It's something that doesn't pop up too often, but if you need it, it's nice that you can just do it using one command instead of finding each character separately. We will do a demo of the title and custom actions for errors. What you can do now is if there is an error, you can provide an action for the user to solve that error or to help solve it. And there's something called app source transactability. It will be available for general use really soon, probably this month. And there's also some addition to the NavApp object where you can find out if your code is running using app source licensing, which is the new transactability, or if it is still using your own licensing, your custom licensing product. So you can now make a difference between that. Then there's something coming in September, probably, which is the general ledger posting aggregation. If you post an invoice in Business Central, until now it will just create one line in your general ledger entry, and it will have a description saying invoice and then the invoice number. And in the past, it was possible to modify that, but you had to add a key to a table, and that's something that you cannot do in AL until now. So Microsoft is redesigning that process, and they will use an interface there. And by creating an implementation of that interface, you will be able to modify the aggregation of that posting. So instead of, for example, one line of your invoice, you can have one for each item description, for example, or whatever is that your preference is. Then there's some improvements in performance. OData web services, they are improved in performance, and that's mainly done by removing the unopened company code from OData sessions. Every time you open an OData session from an external application, it's basically a new session what you open, and it's used to do the on-open company trigger for each of your calls. And for OData, that in a lot of cases that was not necessary. So Microsoft is now removing that. Of course, that means if you depend on code that is using the on-open company trigger, you should probably rewrite your OData code, your interface. There's also improvements in the load times of the navigation and the action bar of all pages. So pages should load faster, and basically because the navigation and action bar are using more optimized code. And also, if you have a list page in your app, and from that list page you can drill down to a card, that performance is also improved. So you should open the card quicker. Then there's an item that you will see later on in this presentation again, and that is that the Business Central server is now running on .NET 6, which is a different version from .NET Framework that we used before. And it can improve the performance of the server up to, let's say, 30% or something like that. So it should definitely mean that your app is running quicker. Also, if you have an app, then you probably know that there is all kinds of apps, all kinds of telemetry in apps. And in per tenant extensions, every time that you upload a new app, there is now extra telemetry coming to the customer environment. So if something goes wrong, or if it takes too long, you can now go to your application insights environment and check why that is. You get more information there in the validation of the per tenant extension. Then for number 2, the hotfixes for older AppSource apps. That's the image in the bottom. What happened until now is that if you had an app, let's say on version 22, and then you published the same app but optimized for Business Central 23, then from that moment on, you would not be able to create a hotfix for customers that were still on 22. Because it would not allow you to create a hotfix for a version that was already replaced by a newer version. So that's now something that can be done. So between the time that the new version is released and until the last customers are updated to your to that new version, you can now still publish hotfixes to older versions. Also, what is coming, what's not yet there, but you can start creating a preview for your AppSource apps. So you can publish your app and allow your customers to have a preview in their environment to see if they like your app and if they want to use it. There's more in telemetry. For all your web service calls, both incoming and outgoing, there's more information in the telemetry. And that information for incoming incoming calls now contains information about how long the call has been waiting. Because if the server is very busy, it will reject calls and place it in a queue. And now you can see in the telemetry how long web service calls have been in that queue. So you can see if your web services are if the performance of your web services is hindered by too many calls. And for outgoing web services, and that's also the next for AL methods, you get now more information about what code on the database level was run to create your result. So it's now in the telemetry of your long-running AL methods. You can see what the database queries were. And also in web service calls outgoing, you get more information about what was run to create the result of your web service. Then if there is an error message popping up, until now you got the localized error message in your application insights. And that's not too good if you have a multi-language solution, because then the same error message would maybe take 2 or 3 or 4 different forms in your application insights. And now you will always be able to retrieve the English United States error text, so the basic error text. So it makes aggregating data from the same error easier. Also, what will be logged now is changes in permission sets. I haven't seen it working yet, but it's definitely coming. So if an extension is installed and that extension modifies existing permission sets by adding a table or something like that, you will now be able to monitor that. Same goes for uploading files. Sometimes if you try to upload a file, that file will be blocked by the service because of malware possible. So there's a malware detection there. And until now, you did not get any notification of that, but now you can see that in the telemetry. And also you get more information about feature management. So if a customer, if a user changes something in feature management, you will now better be able to follow that in your telemetry for that environment. Then we have 4 things for on-premises. The first one is basically for developers. If you are developing on a server where also the web service is running, then by default the compiler would connect through the web-based URL, and that means that it goes through a web service and while it is running on your local server. So you can now you can now override that from your development environment and have quicker access to your server. Also, a Business Central environment has an application database and has tenant databases. And until now, these databases should have the same collation, and the collation is the sorting order of the text inside the database. And you had a problem is if there was a difference. And from this version on, you can have different collations in different tenant databases, and they will all be served by the same application database. Then we are again the .NET 6 update. If you are doing a technical upgrade from an older version that uses .NET Framework to the current version that uses .NET 6, there may be technical upgrade issues. So you need to be aware of that. Sometimes you will also need to update your application if you only want to do a technical upgrade. Microsoft has also rewritten all their control add-ins and all their own code, and everything is converted also to .NET 6. But in the Dutch and the Mexican localizations, there were functions that are not able to be converted to .NET 6. It uses things from the .NET framework that are not in .NET 6. So Microsoft has removed that and replaced that by Azure functions. So if you want to see how that is done, you should check one of these localizations. And then finally, you can control the maximum time that a task can run on your service. The time, for example, for a job queue, a long time running service, you can now better control how long that runs. So there's three things that I want to show. First is the AL Home and AL Explorer, then the event subscribers, and finally custom error actions. And let's open AL. If I have a project open in my Visual Studio Code, if it's a new project, it will by default open with a new page called AL Home. And I can also do that in an existing environment by going to the command palette and then click AL Home, select AL Home. And it basically is a starting page where information about AL is shown, and also news will be shown here by Microsoft. So if you have a new project, you will automatically come here. The AL Explorer is also a new page, and that one is a really nice one because it allows you to see all the code that is used in your app. And for example, all the basic code that is from the base application is now also available here. So if I want to find something for the sales header, I can just type sales header, and it will see everything that refers to sales header, something like that. And it shows me that table 36 is the sales header. And now I can just double click it, and it will open the code for that sales header object. So it's more easy to navigate to existing code. In this view, you can rearrange all the columns if you want. You can have fixed columns so that if I scroll, that it will still remain in view. And I can also order data just by clicking on the column. So it's really easy to find the data that you need. Then we have an event subscriber, and this is basically how an event subscriber looks in AL. And it currently has here an on-open page event, and that on-open page event is basically a function in AL. But I get no information by hovering over there with my error because it is basically here in AL. It's a string constant. And now there is an AL code, and that's the light bulb here. And if I click that one, it will allow me to convert that string literal to an identifier. And I can do that for this event only, or I can do it for this document or for everything in this project, or even in the workspace. But let's do it now for here for this one. And you see that the on-open page event is now not having quotes anymore. So it's no longer a text constant, but it is actually a function. So if I hover over it, it will show me what the definition of that event is. So it helps me as a developer to find out which parameters I need to or I get by using this event. Then the last demo is something that I can show you here in Business Central. I created a page, and it throws a really dumb error message, but it's just for the demo. So I go to my error demo page. And this error demo only expects a few specified values, but if I create a new value, for example, for number 7, and I click my show demo text, until now it will just create an error message and tell me that it has a value that is not required, and the only thing that I can do is click OK or give an information. But what I want to do is to provide my user with an option to do something with that error message. And I can do that here in the code where that error is thrown. there's an error info object. And to that error info object, I can now add something called an action. And it needs a text, which is in my case, the text delete the value. That will be the text on the button. And I can call a code unit, and I will call a function inside that code unit. And that function here is still a string, literal. So if I now publish this one, oops. If I now publish this one to my environment, it should open my page again. Go to my error action demo again. And now if I click my show demo text, it will give a different page, a different message, and I can get this delete the value action. And I can do that, and it will do something for me. It will just call that function, and in this case, it deletes the value. So you can add actions now to an error message. That's basically what I have to show for now.